performance driving. I'm Reg Local. You know I like to keep things a little bit interesting on this channel. So today we're in Finland. We're in Finland just for the day, actually. As some of you may be aware, I sometimes come over to Russia doing some driver training, some advanced driver training in Russia. So this week we've been staying in Sortavala in northern Russia, north of St. Petersburg. It's an area of Russia which used to be in Finland, and it's very close to the Finnish border. So for the day we've travelled over to Finland and had a day driving around Finland. So I thought I'd share the experience. I've also had a few requests over the last 12 months for a video about, I suppose especially for UK drivers, about driving on the right and driving left-hand drive vehicles abroad. So I'm going to include a little bit of that stuff in this video as well. But let's start with driving in Finland. First thing we noticed when we came over the border into Finland was the number of speed cameras. In fact, we should have been alert to that anyway. When we came over the border, one of my friends from Russia had his radar detectors seized because apparently they're illegal in Finland. The Finnish police didn't like him having a radar detector in the car, and then it became very obvious very shortly after crossing the border that the Finns are very, very keen on speed cameras, GATSOs, but only on the main roads. We've been travelling quite a lot on the side roads, the country roads, and we haven't seen one speed camera on these roads at all. It's just the main roads. They seem to be every couple of miles or so. So you need to be careful on the main roads if you're driving over to Finland. Another thing that I noticed pretty much straight away is there's very little traffic away from the towns. It's a very sparsely populated country. Not many people using the roads, even in the middle of the day like this. You get yourself on some of the country roads, pretty much got the roads to yourself, which is nice. So what about driving? Driving in Finland really is very, very similar to driving in any other country where you drive on the right. You'll recognise, if you're a UK driver, you'll recognise pretty much all the road signs. That fairly European standard road sign look to them. You don't need to speak the language to recognise most of the road signs. It's a little bit easier for me in Finland than it is in Russia because they use the normal alphabet here, or what I would consider to be the normal alphabet, so at least I can read some of the road signs even if I might not understand what they say. Read directions, etc. That's a little bit more difficult in Russia when you don't speak the language. The roads in Finland seem to be mostly in good condition. Quite a lot of gravel roads as well, and we'll drive on a gravel road in a little while, and I'll give you my thoughts on driving on gravel and on loose surfaces. It's nowhere near as bad as you think it might be. Good fun actually, makes you feel like a rally driver. But at the moment we're on a sort of secondary road here in between a few villages out in the backwoods of Finland, and you can see that this is a really nice road to drive on. It's a driver's road. Plenty of corners, sweeping bends, some a little bit tighter than others. The countryside's really nice, fairly flat, it's not massively hilly, lots of lakes, of course loads of forest and trees. So let's talk briefly about driving a left-hand drive car on the right. If you've never driven a left-hand drive car abroad before, from the UK, it can be a little bit intimidating at first. Almost like driving in a mirror. Everything is a mirror image of what you're familiar with. Well, I say everything, not absolutely everything. The controls in the car will be familiar. The pedals are in the same order as they are in your right-hand drive car. The gear stick's down on the right, obviously, so you'll spend the first couple of days changing gear with your left hand on the door until you get used to the gear stick being down here. But the gears are in the same order. All the controls in the car, indicator stalks and everything work in the same way. I'm not apologising. If it feels like I'm teaching you to suck eggs with this, there are a number of people who've never driven left-hand drive cars before, and it's worth just mentioning these few things, because those little details can put people off, and there's no need. The next thing is to remember every time you get in the car that we're driving on the right. It's a very, very easy mistake to just jump in the car, set off, drive on the left-hand side of the road, especially first thing in the morning or when you've had a break during the day. It's very easy, especially as well on quiet roads like this, to forget, jump in and immediately drive on the left until you see somebody coming towards you, and then you very quickly realise you've got it wrong. It does cause a number of serious accidents. It causes accidents in the UK with foreign drivers coming to the UK, and it causes accidents for UK drivers abroad. Some people put a bit of tape on the steering wheel with an arrow on it in the direction we should be driving on. I've been doing this long enough now to... I can't remember the last time I forgot to drive on the right, but I think I always remind myself when I get in the car. It's always worth just a little reminder. The fact that you're getting in what to us in the UK is the wrong side of the car helps you to remember, because the next thing that you'll do every time you come to get in the car is you'll get in the passenger side and then wonder where your steering wheel's gone. One of the difficulties I have, and it's still to this day, it takes me a while to get used to it, is judging the distance from the wheels on the right of the car up to the curb. I tend to find myself driving too far towards the centre of the road, and it takes me a while to judge that distance to the right hand curb, and I'm sure that anybody coming over to the UK and driving on the left for the first time has the same problem. So just bear that in mind. Here, for instance, where we're meeting an oncoming car, you can probably move a little bit further than it feels like you can when you're meeting oncoming traffic. So outside of all those differences, driving is exactly the same. The principles of advanced driving are exactly the same. I still drive to the system when I'm driving abroad. So we still introduce that principle of position, speed and gear, and then accelerating through hazards. I still use limit points for cornering. I still use the same principles for safe overtaking. Everything that we do in the car is exactly the same. It's just on the opposite side. It's just almost like it's a mirror image of what you would normally do. One of my little principles when I travel abroad is that I start off by saying that everybody else has priority, because you need to get used to local customs and the way the junctions work. Things like turning left and turning right can feel very odd when you first do it in a left-hand drive car on the right. Remember that turning left is the same as turning right in the UK, turning across oncoming traffic. That can feel very odd. Approaching a roundabout, remember we travel anti-clockwise rather than roundabouts here, rather than clockwise. That can feel very odd. And you will habitually look in the wrong direction at junctions. So on the approach to a junction where you need to give way, in the UK we'll look right first because that's where the traffic's coming from. Anywhere where they drive on the right, you need to look left first. You might have been caught out by this when you've been on holiday and crossing the road. You look one way and think it's clear, and then a car comes the other way from the other direction. So always look left first. Priority on roundabouts generally is to the left. Here, for instance, we're going to turn left at this junction, so I'm checking the mirrors. There's no one to signal to at the moment, but I will put one on just in case anything comes in from the left. There's a car coming from the right now. And I'm going to position here to the centre of the road. Mirrors, first gear, and then turn left. And again, where you're turning left like that, that's where it's very easy to put yourself on the wrong side of the road if it's quiet. So always remind yourself that we're on the right. So driving through these little villages, the observation skills are the same as they are in the UK. Look into all the junctions, check your mirrors regularly, look for crossings, Look for anybody approaching those crossings where you've got commercial premises like we have on the left and right here. Look for vehicles turning in and out. Start with your eyes in the distance. Pedestrian coming up from the right here, but there's no crossing, so she's waiting for me. Observations as per the UK start right in the far distance, so right up there in the distance I can see the road bending round to the right. There's a little bus stop on the left, so we know we're on a bus route. We might be able to expect buses stopping and setting off along this road. Checking the mirrors, I've got a moped in the distance behind me. He'll probably turn off very shortly. As the road bends round to the right, I can see the street lamps disappearing off round to the right before I can see the road itself. Scanning into the junctions left and right, can't see any vehicles coming up. Another what looks like a commercial vehicle premises on the left up ahead, so I'm conscious of vehicles moving in and out of there. And then up on the left is a sign that you'll see quite commonly in this part of the world. It's a picture of a town with a red line through it, so it's just letting you know that we're coming out of the town onto a more open stretch of road. 60 kilometres an hour limit, and the blue arrow on the 471 is the road and the road number that we're on. And then as we leave the village, that's what we call in the UK route confirmation sign. Height of 52 kilometres along route 471. Up ahead there we've got an increase in speed limit. We'll check the mirrors. I'm going to keep third gear, flexibility. One thing we've noticed, and we've commented amongst ourselves about this today as we're driving along the Finnish roads, is that the speed limits tend to be relevant. They tend to be placed near schools, villages, areas that you would want to slow down for anyway. Certainly the 60 kilometres per hour speed limits seem to be highly relevant to a lot of the things that you see on the road. So looking up ahead now, there is a car in the distance. It's out of view at the moment. One of the things I want to point out to you as we're driving along this road is that there's a visual clue from the trees as to which direction the corner's going. So when you've got a long straight or a straightish section of road and then a corner in the distance, but you can't quite see which way the corner goes, look at the trees, and they tend to angle, or the top of the trees tend to angle towards the direction of the corner. So looking ahead now, you can see the trees angle down towards the left, top to bottom, right to left, and that indicates what direction the road is going in. So now we've got a slow moving car up ahead, a little old ladder. I'm going to look for the opportunity to overtake. So I'm going to start by moving into a following position, checking the mirrors, rolling into a 2-second gap, little bit of brakes to get us in a 2-second gap. When I come off the brakes, I'm going to take third gear for flexibility. I'm going to position to the right and look past this little car, looking for the opportunity to overtake. So there's a sign for a junction coming up, so I'm going to wait and see if this car turns at the junction before I start committing to any overtakes. There's a car park or vehicle parked on the left, and as predicted, the car is turning off at this junction. So I'm off the gas, waiting until I've got the view, down to second gear, checking the mirrors, and then accelerating away. So I'm going to position in towards the right now, squeeze the gas as we go around this left-hander, keep the car balanced on the gas all the way around. I'm going to start making a bit of progress now. We're right out in the sticks, out in the forests of Finland. So there's very few junctions and peripheral hazards on the road. We can pick the speed up a little bit. So one of the things about driving in Finland is that a lot of the secondary roads, a lot of the smaller, more local roads are not covered in tarmac or asphalt. They are loose surfaces, gravel roads. They're actually pretty good gravel roads, most of these. They're not particularly rutted or bumpy. And for those of you that are enthusiastic drivers that like motorsport, it does, to be honest, feel like you're on a rally stage, some of these roads. Quite enjoyable, really. Very little traffic on the side roads as well. So what do you need to know about driving on gravel? Well, with my limited experience today of driving on these roads, grip is pretty good. The gravel that they use is very well compacted and they seem to be well maintained. The loose gravel tends to bunch up in the centre of the road or to the sides. So as long as you keep your tyres off the loose gravel and try and stay on the harder compacted stuff, you've got a reasonable amount of grip. So I'll do a little brake test now. You brace yourselves in the back. Once we come around this corner, I'll count down. 3, 2, 1. So the brakes are very effective on this surface, no problem at all. The ABS was just kicking in a little bit then, but that just shows you how much grip you've got, particularly on a dry day, a dry early autumn day. Conditions are pretty good. So it's not really a single track road, there's plenty of width, so if we meet any other vehicles or if anybody wants to overtake us, there's plenty of room for that. I think the biggest risk is getting carried away on these roads if you like driving. Remember that the car can easily get loose in the corners if we're not careful. This car does have stability control and traction control, but it can't overcome the laws of physics. You've only got a certain amount of grip available. It's on summer tyres, normal road tarmac tyres if you like, so we've got to bear that in mind. If I activate the traction control or the stability control, you usually get a little light flickering on the dashboard, so you might see that at some point. And all that, you know, there's two reasons for that. Firstly, it's a little bit of a notification to me that the systems are kicking in and helping to keep me on the road, but secondly, it's just letting me know that we're at the sort of limit of the tyres grip under acceleration and we need to just back off a little bit. Now where these roads are clear and we've got a good clear view, we use the full width of the road as we would on a tarmac road. It opens our view up, it allows us to get an early indication of what the limit point's doing. But remember what the limit point's about. The limit point is the furthest point we've got an uninterrupted view of the road surface, and that's the distance we've got to be able to stop it, the distance we can see to be clear. So stopping on these roads takes a little bit longer in an emergency. So when we're assessing the limit points, I'm just giving myself a little bit more, if you like. I'm just increasing my zone of relative safety. I'm increasing the spare capacity that we've got, both in me and in the car. But really, you don't need any particular special skills to come and drive on these roads. This is just driving. It's just being aware in the back of your mind that if anything happens suddenly, or if we fail to judge something correctly, or if something pulls out unexpectedly, we've got a little bit less grip. So we just need to take that into account when we're driving. But there's nothing to say you can't make good progress on these roads. And it does make you feel a little bit like a Finnish rally driver. So let's have a little bit of a commentary drive on this road now. A steep descent. A little bit of brakes as we come down to the bottom of the hill. Trying to keep on the smooth tarmac. Back on the gas again for the corner. And then for these right-handers, quite often the camber of the road really helps you round on these right-handers. So we want to drop the car right into the apex of the corner on the right-hander and use that banking, use that camber of the road to help us round the corner. Junction on the left, quick scan into it, and looking up ahead. See there's some trees ahead, but I can't see which way the road going. I'm getting the idea it's going left. So I'm positioning to the right, extending the view through the corner as the view opens up, just on the gas, and easing off the gas now, keeping third gear for flexibility. Gentle squeeze on the brakes until I can see the limit point, and then gently on the gas just to pull the car through, dropping it into these little camber changes just to help us through the corner. I am checking the mirror occasionally with no following traffic. It's very quiet on these Finnish roads. Wikipedia says that Finland is the least populated country in Europe per square mile or square kilometre. And looking at this, I tend to believe it. ahead it looks like the road's going around to the left. I'm positioning over to the right, gently on the brakes as we go down the hill, and then picking up the gas again. And once the view opens up, we can go towards the right and use that camber to help us through. As long as we're back to the right again, once we come out the corner. You come over this crest, extend your view into the distance, we can see the road disappearing off through a little farm. Checking the mirrors, there's a reduction in speed limit, 60k. So up in the distance, beyond this little farm, the road's bending around to the right. I'm positioned to the left a little bit, just to increase my view into that right-hander. And there's another warning sign there in the trees. Can't quite make out what it is at the moment. We'll see as we get a bit closer. I think it's a warning sign for children. So maybe there's a school or some kind of holiday type place here. And here's another Finnish speciality, if you like, little ferries. So Finland is the land of 1,000 lakes. As you can see, in between all these little forests and forested areas, there are literally hundreds and thousands of little lakes, large lakes, small lakes, ponds, huge great lakes, and this is the main road, and there's no bridge, just a ferry, and there's no charge for the ferries either. We just drive on one side, drive off at the other. So let's go and have a sail. So here we go. Let this traffic leave the ferry first before we drive on. Check the mirrors. There's a few cars behind us. We'll drive right onto the ferry. Keep it over to the right hand side. Look how much it's moving as we drive on here. So it seems fairly well locked in place. And we'll stop as far forward as we're comfortable. Handbrake and neutral, engine off. And the other thing I do on a ferry, take the seatbelt off just in case there's any problems, we need to get out of the car in a hurry. Good to have your seatbelt off. And off we go. So anywhere else in the UK they'd be charging you £2.50 for that. Nice and free up here in Finland. It's just part of the road network. So that's driving in Finland. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe. If you want to know more about advanced and performance driving, go and have a look at the website, reglocal.com. But for now, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.